Well, I finally did it. I broke down after 23 years and mounted a low-rent lens on my Olympus 4/3 camera just for you all. One audience member asked if I could review some of the kit lenses for the Olympus 4/3 system. And it kind of struck a chord with me when that person pointed out that not everybody can afford the mid-tier glass, much less the super high-grade glass. I remember the days when I was getting my start in photography as I was beginning a new career. I can recall how hard it was to scrape together the money that I needed for what can be a very expensive hobby. And I'll tell you a quick story here. I had gone through a bad breakup right after moving to a new city, and I had already spent most of my money getting us moved and set up with new digs, new furniture, and so forth. And then I had to do it all again after the breakup. So after the split and when I was getting into photography, I was pretty much broke. I had to save up for quite a while just to be able to afford my first quality camera and lens. It wasn't my first camera, but it was my first quality camera. Now, I stress out about everything, and at the time, I was trying to decide between the Nikon F100 and the Canon EOS 3 film cameras. I read every review I could find in magazines and on the internet. I wrote out pros and cons lists multiple times trying to add up the virtues and pitfalls of both cameras. I was doing all of this while I was saving money, and saving money was a very slow process. So I had lots and lots of time to stress, worry, and bounce back and forth between those potential choices. Finally, one day, I had enough money saved up to buy a lens, but not the camera. That was going to take a little while longer. I decided, though, to just bite the bullet and buy a lens so that way I was locked into a system and I wouldn't have to worry about it anymore. So, there was even more agonizing, rending of flesh, gnashing of teeth, until I finally landed on the Canon 28-135 3.5 to 5.6. I thought it would be a versatile lens and that it would let me do a little bit of everything. I ordered it and I was done deciding between systems. I had that lens, and only that lens, for about 5 months until I pulled together enough money to buy the Canon EOS 3 film camera. I used that lens for everything for a couple of years for both film photography and digital photography when I picked up the Canon 10D. Money was still tight back then, even after a couple of years, but I took a vacation out west to get some photos of the light beams at Antelope Canyon and to get some of the Grand Canyon instead of buying another lens. I thought I could make the 28-135 work out there, and it did for the most part. But when you're rocking the 28-135 on a Canon 10D with a 1.6 crop factor, that wide end of 28 millimeters actually turns into about 45 millimeters. That's not exactly the best focal length for close quarter shots inside of a slot canyon or for wide, majestic landscapes shots that I really wanted to get for places like Monument Valley or the Grand Canyon. But hey, the 28-135 and the 10D was what I had, so I did the best I could. I was still new to photography, especially digital photography, and I was still trying to learn as I went along. I didn't know about focus stacking and blending exposures back then. I was just stumbling my way through this new thing called digital photography with everybody else. I'm still happy with the shots I took out there on my first trip west in 2003. They are a reminder of the fun I had learning something new, and a couple of them weren't that bad. That was also right around the time that I discovered the Olympus E1, and I got sucked into the rabbit hole of the Olympus E system. The point is, I understand the struggle when it comes to finances and acquiring gear for photography, especially when there are higher priorities like, food, rent, taking care of family, and so forth. And just this week, even being a huge Olympus fan, I got in a Canon 16-35 f2.8 III in mint condition, and I've got a 35mm f1.4 that's on its way as I put this video together, and it should be here in the next day or two. So believe you me, I understand the struggle. So, After having my memory jogged by that viewer, I decided to go ahead and try out the Olympus 40-150 f3.5 to 4.5 low-level kit lens, and I have it right here. This is an external zoom lens. As you can see, the barrel extends when you zoom out, and the focus ring on this isn't that bad. It's just the slightest bit loose, but it's pretty well dampened overall, especially when you consider the price of the lens and the grade of it, the consumer grade lens. Now the lens is made of plastic, but it still feels pretty robust in the hand. It's not bad at all. It doesn't feel rinky dink. It does feel solid. Now the focus ring is kind of loosey goosey, but that's kind of what you get. That's the nature of the beast with the focus by wire mechanism of those cameras back in the day. But the lens itself is pretty well made considering the price for it. Now, the one that I had on hand was basically unused, and it came essentially for free with the E300 that I bought, and that was basically unused as well. It only had a couple of hundred shutter actuations on it. And if I remember correctly, I paid like $125 to $135 for the entire package, both the lens and the camera, with a seller on eBay that I had dealt with before. And that's not a bad deal considering, what I got for the package. But this lens, though, has been sitting around here for quite a while since I never had a desire to use it until just this past week or two. Now, the 40-150mm was released in September 2004, and it was included as a kit lens for the Olympus E500. And if I'm not mistaken, they also had some two lens kits for the E500. So you kind of got like a really nice bundle. And it was the 40-150 along with the 14-45, 3.5 to 5.6, I think. But essentially you got two kit lenses with the E500. It's not a bad deal for somebody who's just getting their start. Now, the lens features 13 elements in 10 groups. It's about 4.2 inches long, and it weighs in at 425 grams, just under a pound, just a hair under a pound. Now, with the 2x crop factor of 4/3 cameras, the 40-150 provides a field of view of 80 to 300 millimeters. That's in full frame terms. That's a pretty decent zoom range. And those apertures seem pretty bright for that range, but keep in mind that the 2x crop factor applies to depth of field as well as your field of view. The short end, like this, has a full frame equivalent depth of field of f7 as the max aperture, and the long end, when you zoom it all the way out, max aperture is f9. So you'll get the brightness for shutter speeds and exposure, but you're not going to be blowing out any backgrounds except in very rare circumstances. Now, being that this is a kit lens, you're going to see some chromatic aberrations, especially at longer focal lengths. There is a bit of barrel distortion at the wide end, and there's also a little bit of pin cushion distortion at longer focal lengths. And you're going to see some vignetting as well, though vignetting is fairly easy to correct, in Lightroom or Photoshop. Also, cameras like the E500, they have a setting in there that's called shading compensation, and that's for correcting vignetting. So your mileage may vary as to how effective that is, but you could give it a try if you had an E500. Now, as I said, I spent the last week taking pictures with this lens. I got out as often as I could, considering YouTube isn't my main gig yet, so I had to squeeze in photo sessions around town whenever I could get away from my main work. Now, I put together a slideshow of images that I got with the 40-150 so you could have a look for yourself at how it performed before we come back and I share my own personal views about this lens. Those images were taken with the E300 and the E500, which share essentially the same sensor, and the images were taken at different times of day and during different types of weather, but not that different. You're just going to see that there were some dark and stormy skies in a few of the shots. I included a lot of high detail, almost chaotic shots to provide a reference point for you with regard to sharpness and the lens's ability to resolve details. There's also a few throwaway shots in there that are there mainly for you to get a feel for the tonality and the color rendering of this lens. Anyway, have a look at the slideshow, and I'll catch you on the other side with my own thoughts about it. And there you have it. What do you think? What was your impression of the 40 to 150 based on those images? I would appreciate it very much if you shared your thoughts with us about this lens in the comments below. I'd be curious to see what you think about the sharpness or the resolution or the color rendering, the tonality, or whatever thoughts that you have about the lens. Now, the images may not be the kind that you take, and the compositions weren't the best since I was working quickly during the past week to get as many decent samples as I could. But this isn't about my style or skills in delivering masterpieces or works of art. It's about how the lens performed in different settings. Honestly, I was surprised by how well the 40 to 150 performed and by the quality of the files when I sat down and did a little editing. I did tweak the files a little, and I'll be honest, I debated it back and forth in my mind. I just didn't think it was a good idea to share straight out of the camera images without a little bit of editing on it because I was afraid you'd get the wrong impression of the lens or the camera. I thought it was more important to share edited images that showcased how good the images can be with just a little bit of processing, and I didn't go crazy here. Mainly contrast, clarity, some sharpness, maybe color shifts here and there, but that's about it. Now, my choice of subjects and processing may not be your style, but try to look at the images objectively and think about the different performance aspects that you're looking for in a lens. I know what kind of images I can get from these cameras with the super high grade lenses and the mid tier lenses, and I was really impressed by how close the image quality got to what I could do with those top tier lenses. Now, if you punch in and pixel peep, you can see where this lens isn't as sharp as some of those higher tier offerings. But photography is more about mood and light and story and context. I've seen stunning images, absolute masterpieces, by photographers way more talented than me, taken with what most of us we'd consider it crap glass. When it comes down to it, the art of photography is about the scene, the light, the story, and it's not about the gear that you use. Now, I'm talking about photography. I'm as guilty as anyone else in forgetting that sometimes, but I'm also the first to admit that I love the experience of using the gear as much as creating the image itself. That's probably why there are more people out there that are way better than me. The 40-150 has its own character that adds a bit of flavor to the files, but sometimes that character is what photographers like about certain lenses. That character can help shape a photographer's style or create a certain look that they want for an image. Now, does that mean I'm going to throw out my super high-grade lenses and my mid-tier lenses and only start using the kit lenses from now on? Not really. But it does open my eyes to how good the Olympus kit lenses actually were. And it provides me with another tool that I can use if I'm trying to get a certain look. It also makes me want to go out and try some of the other consumer-grade lenses to see what else I've been missing because of my lens snobbery. Some that I'm thinking about picking up and trying and that were suggested by viewers include the 35mm macro, the 9-18, and the 14-45, f3.5 to 5.6. If and when I do pick up those lenses and try them out, I'll make sure to post my reviews and my thoughts on them. Meanwhile, I've still got plans for videos about mid-tier Olympus lenses like the 11-22, the 12-60, and the 14-54, and for more super high-grade lenses like the 7-14 f4, the 150mm f2, and the 35-100 f2. On top of that, there are still Olympus bodies that I want to cover, including the E500, E30, and E5, as well as stuff for more modern cameras like the Canon 5D SR, Nikon ZF, and the Sony A7 IV. And all of that is just a fraction of the stuff that I'd like to cover, including general tech, EDC gear, imaging tech, and maybe some travel videos and so forth. My mind starts going into hyperdrive just thinking about everything that I want to do and cover, but sometimes I just have to take a breath and do one thing at a time. This channel is going to be a very long journey, and so far, I've just barely left my driveway. I'm glad you stopped in to watch another video and to spend your time with us. If you found anything you like, smash that like and subscribe button and watch another video if you really want to jump in there and jumpstart the algorithm. I'll put a couple of choices in here to help make it easy for you. Have fun, take care, and I'll talk to you soon.